everybody, to another episode of Making Monsters. I'm joined today by Lauren Brooks. Lauren Brooks is on Helmets and Heels with me. Everyone hears me talk about Helmets and Heels, talk about the Jaguars, and now the two get to combine for a week, which is fun and not fun for me, Lauren, because I feel like I said this on the show, it's a little awkward because it's like I cheer for both teams normally week to week, and then people ask me this week, who do you want to win? Who do you think's going to win? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what I want. But I did say on air here that the Bears are my number one team, and it's just, I grew up a Bears fan, so it's easier for me and been more of my life of cheering for them. But it is still a little weird because there are moments where I'm like, okay, well, now we have these two teams that I follow and care about and love and have shirts for both and all of these things combined in one. But thanks for hopping on with me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think most people who watch this podcast probably knew your answer was going to be that the Bears are number one and not the Jags, because otherwise you would do a Jags podcast.
Yeah, they are saying it's Taylor Hate Week here in Jacksonville because obviously I'm rooting for the Bears. But let's get into some of the matchup because there is a lot of question marks, I think, on both teams right now. Like, the Bears are new. They have a new quarterback. They have new young wide receivers. They have a new offensive coordinator. So their questions are more along that line, along those lines. The Jaguars, more so, the majority of them have been together. You know, Doug Peterson's been here for a little while now. Press Taylor's been here. Trevor Lawrence has been here. Travis Etienne's been here. Christian Kirk's been here. Evan Ingram's been here. There are some newer pieces on the defensive side, but let's start with the offense. And so far this season, what's been wrong? What's been going wrong offensively with the Jaguars?
Well, I think honestly each week you could say something different. The first couple weeks the offensive line played like trash, and I think Trevor Lawrence was a little bit hurried in the pocket because going back to last season, a lot of people remember he was hurt, and he had not just one injury, he had 5 different injuries. So knee and ankle and concussion and all the things. And so I think, yes, he's feeling rushed back there because the line isn't protecting him, or they weren't. The last 2 weeks, the line has been fantastic, and Trevor's had time to throw the ball, and you've seen that lead to certainly a better performance by Trevor. But then the Jaguars had play calling issues the first couple weeks in addition to the line issues. The Jaguars obviously only have one win, and in that win, everything worked well.
Yeah.
But in other losses, and they have 4 losses, you could literally point to multiple different things. Trevor had a horrible game against the Texans, and he missed some wide open throws, even though he had time to throw. And so the one thing that I think has been pretty good is the run game between Tank Bigsby and Travis Etienne and a little bit of Dearness Johnson. That's been going well, but the passing game has felt like it's, I'm not going to call it broken because last week the Jags passing offense was really good, but it hasn't been cohesive whatsoever. Yeah. And so, again, Jags fans want to say, well, we need a new play caller. Yeah. Well, they didn't even know who the play caller was until a couple weeks ago because Doug Peterson wouldn't answer that question. We learned it is Press Taylor, or at least it was that week. Who knows week to week what it is. But, yeah, so there's been a combination of things. The one positive, in addition to the run game, is Brian Thomas Jr. Yeah. And Bears fans are probably familiar with him because they have Roma Dunze and those guys, along with Malik Neighbors and Marvin Harrison Jr., were all in that rookie class together. But Brian Thomas Jr. has been sensational. He has 3 games of 85 yards or more in the last 3 games. He is explosive, electric speed, and so it's fun to watch his development and that chemistry with Trevor Lawrence. And it's also fun to see a Jags receiver be a true number 1. We haven't seen that in a long time.
Wow. I know, and the Bears are kind of looking at that too because the Bears haven't had, we talk about the years with Brandon Marshall and Alshon Jeffrey, and that's probably the 2 best seasons that you've had of multiple good wide receivers. So the Bears are looking at it like DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, and Roma Dunze. We don't know what this world is that we're living in right
now.
And
a quarterback.
And a quarterback, yeah.
Although you love Justin Fields. So,
I did. I was a Fields fan, and everybody that listened to Making Monsters knew I was pro keep Justin, but I understand why Caleb was the answer, too. Like, I completely you were handed the number 1 pick by the Panthers, so I was like, I understand, like, you were in a that's not the circumstance. Normally, you were sucked the year before, so you get the first pick, and then you kind of take the quarterback because that's your only option. That wasn't their only option, but they were given it for free. So it's like, what do you do?
For free.
For free. Yeah. Years of losing kind of led to that.
Yeah,
but.
I was thinking back to Justin that they should keep both Caleb Williams and Justin Fields and Justin be the backup, because if Caleb Williams got hurt, you have a guy who knows the system.
Yeah,
you have a guy
familiar with everything.
Yeah, also both quarterbacks are mobile, so you don't have that big drop off. With the Jags, they used to complain that they had Blake Bortles, who's a super mobile quarterback, but the backups never were. And so if ever he had to step out, you don't have a guy that can run the same offense.
You have to rework your entire offense to make things work.
But I guess for politics-wise, that's why they were like, we can't have both, because if Caleb plays bad, people are going to call for Justin. And obviously for Justin Fields, it's worked out fairly well to this point in the season.
Yeah, and when we talk about the Jags offense, because you were talking about the running backs, we just had this conversation on Helmets and Heels too. Tank Bigsby and Travis Etienne.
I can't believe I said Tank Bigsby first.
Which I didn't even say Travis Etienne's name on Helmets and Heels today until you were like, hold on, we need to talk about Travis. But Tank's been so good, and we had glimpses of that preseason last year, and there was a lot of chatter about this kid's going to be really good. He came in, he had multiple fumbles. It kind of felt like they snatched everything away from him because of those fumbles. Now this year, he goes in, we're saying the same things in camp, so everyone was a little more hesitant of like, we said this last year, and then it didn't work out, but it really felt a little different because it did feel like the run game was working better even in camp and in preseason, and it did feel like Tank brought this just different edge to the run game. And now we're seeing that develop into games, which has kind of led to maybe more Tank than Etienne. But Tank is just really good at forcing missed tackles and getting those yards after carry. So what do you think? Yards after contact. And what do you think this weekend looks like? Do you think it's an even amount of the two? Do you think they go heavy on Tank? What would be your thought on it?
So what I want versus what Doug Peterson said is a little different. So I do think Tank Bigsby is the best running back on this team. And that's without, like, even if Travis Etienne's not injured because he has a shoulder injury, I still think Bigsby's better. And Doug Peterson said after the game, because we saw a lot of Bigsby in the Jags win over the Colts, that Travis is still their guy. He does have the shoulder. But Bigsby is able to do things that I don't think Travis Etienne can do. And yes, it's the yards after the contact. It's also the speed in which he hits the hole. I don't know the exact miles per hour. I know he was clocked fairly high on that 65-yard run, but 61-yard run, whatever it was. But it's the vision. That's one thing that, like, the last 2 seasons with Etienne, I thought that he had that, and then the more we just thought the offensive line was bad. But the more you dive in, it was like, no, I think he actually missed the small hole that was there. And
that Tank can find.
And there's a difference between being a really good third down back and being a good back on every down. And I think Etienne is the really good third down back, but Bigsby is the good back on every down. And he runs just with this explosive, powerful method of running, and it's fun to watch. And yes, he hasn't had, I think, other than 1 fumble this season. So that issue has been prevented, but it's exciting to see someone be able to gain momentum almost, even when hit. And that's something that, again, Etienne is really good in his own right, but I almost think he's a better pass catcher as a running back than out of the backfield, and he's better in pass protection than Bigsby is. But there's just, when Tank gets the ball, the number 4 gets the ball, watch out.
You're looking. And it's funny because DeAndre Swift is also number 4. So we'll have 2 number 4 running backs on the field and see how both different style running backs, because I think Swift is more of a Etienne type running back. He's not going to be that one that's going to just like bulldoze guys at the line. He can pass catch a little bit better. But it will be interesting to see how the Bears want to handle the Jags, because of, you have a guy like Tank and you have Travis Etienne. So you have 2 backs that most people, Travis Etienne would be starting on other teams. Like, he's one of those running backs that would be. Tank Bigsby probably at this point would be too. A year ago we wouldn't have said that. But then you also, if you focus too much on the run, then you also have to be like, oh, they have Christian Kirk, you have Brian Thomas Jr. Evan Ingram looks like he should be back this weekend. He's been injured, so that's another piece of the offense that now comes in. And then, oh, by the way, we've had this guy named Brenton Strange who's kind of broke out in these last few weeks since Travis Etienne's been out. So now there are multiple weapons that can really help Trevor, though. I think probably the more disappointing one is Gabe Davis. I myself even thought that Gabe Davis would be a way bigger part of this offense, and especially in the red zone, than he has. But they found other ways to kind of work around that. So when it comes to the Bears' defense, there are a lot of things to cover. And when Trevor Lawrence is on, like, he's on, and that's one of the things you just have to figure out kind of which game you're getting from Trevor in that offense at this point.
Yeah, I think every game comes down to matchups, right? And Evan Ingram is always someone that presents a nightmare matchup for the defense. Without him, the offense has struggled, other than on Sunday against the Colts. But the Colts have the worst passing defense in all of the league, so you should have had success there. Having Evan Ingram back and having 2 tight ends is what we expect to happen if he's healthy, or healthy enough at least to play with Brenton Strange and Evan Ingram there. That's going to, I think, mess with the Bears' defense. But look, if the Jaguars want to run the ball, and if they're able to find success running the ball, because that's where the Bears' defense has been a little bit weaker, then that's what you do. You hand the ball off, and you hope that your offensive line is better running the ball. And at this point in time, it doesn't feel like, though, Press Taylor is willing to just lean into what works.
Right, yeah.
And that's what makes fans so frustrated. Because if we can see it from where we are, why can't they see it? And now he calls the plays on the field versus in the press box, in the coach's booth, which is always interesting,
he went back?
He's
on the field now.
He's on the field.
Yeah.
But you wonder, like, were you able to see things a little bit better when you're up high? Either way, the Jags offense, if they can, I think, start off quickly, like start off fast, because that's something that's hampered them throughout the first 4 weeks, especially before the Colts game, not being able to score a touchdown on that opening drive, just put so much pressure on them.
Yeah.
And so I do think what's fascinating, and we haven't even talked about this much on this, or this aspect on the show this much this week, is the London.
Yeah.
The Jaguars are very familiar with London. Their travel plans are delayed a little bit because of the Hurricane Milton, but they should be leaving today and then arriving tomorrow, and then having plenty of time, they feel, to practice in time for Sunday afternoon London time. And so do the Jaguars feel more comfortable in London because they've been going over there for so long versus the Bears? That's something, too, that right in that first quarter, I think that's where you'll see if that matters take place.
Well, and that's why the Bears adjusted, because they felt the last time they went to London, them leaving when they didn't work. So they've been there now for 2 days, and they've been practicing. They're on their normal schedule. All of them are probably jet-lagged, gone at this point, or at least getting to that point. So they figured that last time, because I think they've only been twice, and they're 1-1 in London, and the one loss was by a couple points. And so it's not like they've played bad in London. They've been one of the teams. They've won a game, and then they've played a close game in London. But it didn't feel like the Bears didn't feel organizationally that it flowed the way they wanted it to flow for a normal practice week. And so they changed it and they adjusted. We'll see how this ends up working, because right now they're also like getting to just kind of go sightsee and do stuff. And we saw a few years ago when Jags did that and someone got arrested in London. So let's not do that. But
don't have too much free time while you're in the United Kingdom.
Too much. But when we're talking about, let's flip over and we're talking about Jags defense.
Yeah.
Jags defense there was a lot of hype coming in because Ryan Nielsen was this coach who kind of flipped Atlanta's defense into this product that a lot of people are watching of like, wow, this is like a pretty ferocious defense. And they were known for like an attack style type thing. That's the word we used a lot this offseason. They go and you had Tyson Campbell, who most people were confident in. He was hurt last year. So you're like, it's okay. Tyson Campbell will be healthy. And Andre Sisco's going to have a breakout year. And you lose Darius Williams, but Ronald Darby's going to be this guy who has had these flashes in his previous stops. And Darnell Savage is this guy who's so versatile and he could do all of these things. And there was all of this momentum in that area. And then, Eric Armstead, what is he going to bring to the interior of this line? It just has not all connected. And unfortunately, Tyson Campbell gets hurt again. So you've been dealing with that. Foye Oluokun, who's probably the leader on your defense, the best player on your defense, is not playing also. So those things also hurt. But other guys who you thought would be able to step up and make impact just haven't really.
Yeah, that's been, to me, one of the more fascinating things about the Jags so far through 5 games this season is that the defense we expected to see based off of training camp, based off of preseason, is not at all the defense that we see. I thought week 1, oh wow, Nielsen is the guy. I'm so glad the Jags hired him as defensive coordinator and got rid of Mike Caldwell, because the Jags limited the Dolphins early in that game, other than a big play to Tyreek Hill later. Obviously, ultimately lost. But then since then, teams have been, including the Browns, have been able to kind of go up and down the field on them. And we now know the Browns are terrible. Deshaun Watson is not a good quarterback. But Joe Flacco, who is a guy that should be really a clip holder on the sidelines.
Yeah, like on the way out at this point.
Right, was able to get over 300 yards on this Jags defense.
And 3 touchdowns.
Right. So the run defense has been okay. The pass defense has not been good. And yes, to your point, they're missing some pieces. But that shouldn't change everything. You should have guys ready. And Buster Brown, I think, has done a good job stepping in for Tyson Campbell. But overall, it's way too many busted coverages.
Yeah.
And at some point in time, I don't know if that's the players. I don't know if that's the scheme that they're running. They started off playing a lot of man. Then they switched now recently more to zone. Obviously, if you watched the Jags-Bills game on that Monday night, which went all Bills, the Jags played a ton of man against Josh Allen. Well, Josh Allen's really good against man. He's not that good against zone. And then the next week against C.J. Stroud, it was reversed. And so it just doesn't feel like the defense is aggressive.
Yeah.
They're not blitzing a ton, which I would love to see more blitzing. We thought that would happen with Nielsen. The 2 players that certainly the Bears have to account for, Josh Hines, Allen, Trayvon Walker. Eric Armstead had a sack in the first game against the Dolphins. He hasn't done anything since.
Yeah.
And Devon Hamilton, certainly no interior pass rush. But those two guys on the outside, those two defensive ends, Trayvon Walker had 3 sacks alone in the game last week against the Colts, that win, and then Josh Hines-Allen forced the fumble. So it's those two guys are really good, and everybody else seems to be lacking. Ventrell Miller has stepped in with Boyalukin being hurt, and he's played fantastic, really well. But yeah, the secondary, Antonio Johnson replaced Rayshon Jenkins, who the Jags let walk in free agency.
Who's having a really good season, by the way.
Rayshon is, Antonio Johnson is not. And so that makes me wonder, are they going to switch out the safeties a little bit? Because Johnson did suffer an injury in the win against the Colts. So to me, they need to make some more personnel changes in order to get the defense to where I saw it in training camp was so good.
And I heard Coach Campo, which obviously he used to coach for the Dallas Cowboys. He was a head coach. He coached here in Jacksonville. And he's a defensive-minded coach, so he goes very in-depth. And he just did a whole podcast on how bad the safeties have been. And he was even saying that they don't even look like they're in the right places. And that, to me, goes beyond just them. To me, that's a coaching issue, too, because when your players aren't even in the right spot, it seems like there's something else going on than just, Antonio not picking up certain things that he's supposed to be picking up. But there is an issue there, and I think maybe some of it, Tommy Mack talks on it a lot, Lauren, about how the interior, and we had this issue last year, there was no interior pass rush, and how much does that affect everything? How much does it affect your edge rushers? How much does it affect your linebackers? How much does it affect those guys in the back? And there's no interior right now in Jacksonville, interior pass rush in Jacksonville, and that's what will be interesting when it comes to this Bears matchup, because most people going into this season said that our tackles are what we're most confident in on the Bears offensive line, and Darnell Wright and Braxton Jones. Braxton Jones had not a single pressure allowed last week, and granted, it's the Panthers, and that's what we kind of have to both keep saying. Like, the Jags are like, it was the Colts, and it was the Colts without Jonathan Taylor, and it was the Colts with Joe Flacco and missing a lot of their defense. But the Bears, it's also just the Panthers that they're playing. So this week, I think for both teams is more so can tell them their strengths and weaknesses more so than what they've seen maybe the last couple weeks.
Yeah, that's a good point, because I wonder if both teams are a little bit, especially offensively, overconfident. Mm-hmm. The Jags defense can't be confident after what we saw, but are both offenses a little overconfident because of the matchups that they had last week? And in the end, I think a 3-2 team versus a 1-4 team, your record is what you are, right? Like, everyone around here in Northeast Florida can say, well, the Jags could have won against the Dolphins. They could have beaten the Browns. They had no chance against the Bills. And they could have beaten the Texans. Well, that's well and good, but you didn't do it. And that, to me, is the sign of a team that isn't going to make the playoffs. And that's where we are right now as far as the Jaguars are concerned. They're a team that I don't think is going to make the playoffs. That could change with a couple wins in London. The Jaguars face the Patriots in London after the Bears this Sunday. Two teams that before the season you thought the Jags should be able to beat because of the rookie quarterback situation. Yeah. But Caleb's not really playing like a rookie quarterback. Drake May will see this coming weekend.
Yeah, he's getting kind of thrown into
when he looks like, everything you read is the Patriots' offensive line is going to get him killed. So we'll see if he even plays the week after. But it's been, to me, a frustrating thing that we have we can't say what the identity is of the Jags offense or the Jags defense to this point. We know the special teams are always going to be good. Yeah. We love Logan Cook. We love Cam Little. We love Ross Matzik, the all-pro long snapper. He'll have you know. But what is the identity of the Jaguars offense? Yeah. Right now, I guess you would say running the ball, but you're not going to win week to week in this league if that's what you hang your hat on. Yeah. And defensively, I honestly have no idea. Nothing cheap, nothing deep was supposed to be the mantra. Well, they've allowed a lot of cheap, they've allowed a lot of deep.
Yeah, and that's what it is so weird, though, going back, because we really all thought that the defense was going to be the one that it's okay. Like, the offense can take a little bit. It can take a little bit to get acclimated with a new center and Mitch Morse, and with, Tank kind of getting into his own this season, and with Brian Thomas Jr. as a rookie. The offense has time. It's okay because the defense can take care of a lot of things, and it hasn't felt like that in Jacksonville whatsoever. It's almost like the offense still has to make up for some of the things that the defense cannot do, which isn't ideal.
Yeah, allowing 34 points to the Colts without their starting running back. Yeah. And, I mean, Alec Pierce is good, but he's not so good that he should have too long.
It's not Jamar Chase or Justice Jefferson.
Right. And I think that's the other thing, too, is the Bills we thought were this, hot shot, one of the best teams in the NFL. And so, no wonder you got blown out. They're such a good team. But they've regressed in the last couple weeks, too. So I know in the NFL after week one, it's called Overreaction Monday for a reason, right? Yeah. Because, and college football too, we are like, okay, what we saw on Saturday or Sunday is what this team is.
Everything.
Right. And then you go to the next week and here in Jacksonville, it's like, oh boy, it's getting even worse than we thought. And then week 3 was, oh my gosh, I don't even want to watch this team the rest of the year. Can't believe we have to talk about this.
We were talking about firings like that week.
Yes, because it was so awful.
Yeah.
And so I think the leaders of this football team, and I'm sure for the Bears it's the same way, the leaders of the football team have to take accountability, and they have to be more vocal and communicative when they're on the field. Mm-hmm. And not having Foye Oluokun is certainly difficult, but offensively, that's Trevor.
Yeah.
Trevor Lawrence, yes, he just turned 25 this past Sunday. Like, that's insane to think.
It is wild.
When they're in year 4 and they're still just 25. But you got $275 million contract extension. You are the franchise quarterback, and he knows that. But I love that we're seeing a little bit more feistiness out of him.
Yeah.
I think it's always been there. It's just what do we actually get to see, right? And so he got into it a little bit with Gabe Davis on the sidelines this past Sunday. I love stuff like that. Like, if you're not doing your job, I need to be able to
address
say,
this.
Yeah. If you come in for a Taylor's tangent on helmets and heels and you say, I got nothing, I'm going to say, Taylor, you should have done your
have a job here.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think it's a players' league.
Yeah.
The coaches can only do so much. And defensively, without Foye, Josh Hines-Allen certainly, I think, has to be that guy. Trayvon Walker is not a super vocal guy, but I think he's got to get in there, and they've got to be able to inspire each other. Because going back to week 2 of the Jags-Browns game, that was the Jaguars' home opener.
Yeah, that was not.
And they came out and they were flat. And they even said after the game, like, we don't know why we were so flat.
They just didn't even have answers, and And that's what I think when I was saying in the beginning of this, too. Like, the two teams are both in the figuring it out phase, but the problem is the Jaguars shouldn't be still in the figuring it out phase. And so that's why I think each side, I think the Jaguars are looking at this and they're like, this is a beatable Bears team because they are still figuring things out. They do have a rookie quarterback who's only going to be playing his 6th game in the NFL with a lot of new weapons. And then the Bears are looking at it like, this team's won 1 game and they're supposed to be the team that could kind of figure it out. They weren't favored in the division. It was supposed to be the Texans all along, but they were that one that was like, they still have a chance at making this playoff because they're that good, even in the AFC, who we've talked about being better all around than the NFC. And so it's interesting. It's 2 teams on very different spectrums right now. What do you think with Doug? Because a week ago, let's say pre-Colts game, a lot of the conversation was Doug. Is Doug going to be fired? Who's going to be the first coach fired? Is it time? Is it Doug's fault? People are starting to relate his time in Jacksonville to his time in Philly. There's Reddit threads on it at this point. They beat the Colts. If they come back, let's say they beat both teams in London, does that narrative of Doug drastically change because of those 2 games?
I think it depends on
how they look,
how the Jags look, but also how the press conferences go. And after wins, you're not going to get testy Doug anyway because you won a football game and it doesn't matter how it looked. But the reason that the Jaguars fans have been so upset is because the last couple press conferences with losses, he's been like, it's a 2-way street. Players got to play. Yeah. And he's not taking any accountability. And so we've never seen that from him before. The Jaguars have had lots of losing in the past, even under Doug. This is his 3rd year. And he's never basically pointed the finger and been like, they got to execute.
Yeah.
Like,
Players
what
have
do you
to
want
play.
Me, right. Yeah. What do you want me to say? What do you want me to do? And so I think when fans think that a head coach is disinterested, or a coordinator, but you see it more in the head coach, is disinterested, like, remember, and y'all know this because you're watching this, fans will do whatever it takes to win. They just can't physically help the team win. But if they could.
I'm trying.
Right. If they could, we will, we're superstitious, right? Yeah. Like, we'll wear the same thing or sit in the same spot or everything I've done, obviously, for this season hasn't got according to plan until last Sunday. But we care so much. And if we think, whether it's a player or coach, that they don't care, that is infuriating. And that leads to, if there's apathy in that person, then they need to go. Yeah. And so that's where, and also, like we talked about, if Doug Peterson's not even going to say who's calling the plays, well, Jags fans are going to say, well, then ultimately that's on you, no matter who's calling the plays. Yeah. Play calling is such a funny thing to me. The play calling is probably around the same for every team in the NFL for every game. They have this playbook, and occasionally you'll see some trick plays, like we saw on Monday night, Travis Kelce. Yeah. Whether it was a called trick play or not, we'll never know, but he laterals the ball, right, for the Chiefs.
The Lions have done it a few times this year.
Yeah, for the most part, though, you have a handful of trick plays, but everyone, it's all about the same. Yeah. It's just are the players executing? And if they are, then no one talks about play calling.
Yeah.
If the players don't execute, then it's
like, what is the play? What is Press doing?
Right. But in the loss to the Texans, the Jaguars had multiple opportunities where I think Press Taylor called great plays.
Yeah.
Trevor Lawrence just missed them. And so the fans here have been furious with Doug. They've been furious with Press. They've been furious with Trevor. Trevor needs to go. He's not the answer, although you can't get rid of him because of that contract. Who else? And Ryan Nielsen. They've been, and Rashad Khan too. Like, when you only have one win on the season, there's anger.
Everyone is to blame at that point.
Is to blame. And there's anger from all sides. And so the trip to London certainly can help right the ship, but the Jags have some really tough games following the mid part of the season. And so the 3/4 mark or whatever. And so I don't think the fans are going to just let Doug Peterson off the hook because the Jags win 2 games.
That they should technically win. And the eyes in preseason, preseason, it was like, that's 2 games in London. That's those are 2 easy wins.
Yeah, they want to stay mad right now. That's the thing.
Yeah, I think that it's just going to be. It's one of those situations where the Bears, they haven't been at 5. This is the first time the Bears have been over 500 since the week 3 of 2022.
Okay.
Because they were 2-1 to start the season in 2022, and then it was just a lot of losing. And then last year it was a lot of up and down, and more so like middle of the season was their better part. So this is the first time that we're like, okay, like, we don't suck. It's not a sucking team anymore. But they also invested a lot, so you shouldn't. Like, I talked to you guys a lot about this. Like, they did enough to bringing in Keenan Allen, and they did enough to draft Rome. Even if, I said it all offseason, even if Caleb isn't what everybody thinks Caleb can be, which I don't think he's there yet. I think he can be there. But he's still showing flashes of like, oh, this is why this guy was the #1 overall pick. But I always said, even if he wasn't, even if Tyson Bagent was starting for the Bears right now, I still think they'd be able to manage to win certain games just because of all of the talent and because of the defense. Like, I mean, you have this defense has 6 interceptions, I think 2 or 3 more forced fumble recoveries, and then also you have 14 sacks on the season. Like, that to me is enough to help your offense when a team has to score. I mean, they can't even score, let's say 21. So your offense only has to get to 20 points to win a game. Like, you think you should be able to win, but it's not always the case, as we know, in Jacksonville and in Chicago.
And that is what I think the Jaguars are still searching for.
Yeah.
They're searching for one side of the ball to be able to uplift the other.
Yeah.
And they struggle, obviously, with takeaways. The Jaguars have no interceptions to this point in the season. Neither do the Titans, neither do the Commanders. Commanders are one of the teams, though, that obviously are playing really well with rookie quarterback Jaden Daniels. But you've got to be... The moment that your defense picks the ball off, that inspires the offense so much. The moment that you have that strip sack, which we've only seen one of, the moment that the defense gets the big sack, that inspires the offense, and then they can help each other. The moment the offense obviously scores a touchdown, there's this overall, like, mentality of, this is ours, let's go take it.
Yeah.
And the Jaguars, for some unknown reason, and that's why people want to point to Doug Peterson, they don't have that, like, let's go out there and take this game when there's 4 minutes left on the clock. Like, they haven't been able to do it.
Yeah.
They should have been able to do it against the Dolphins. They failed. They didn't do it against the Colts. The only reason they won is because they ended up coming back and getting the field goal.
Yeah.
But with 4 minutes on the clock, they basically spent, I think, 40 seconds of it and then gave the ball right back to the Colts.
Yeah.
The Colts drove down and scored.
Yeah, and that's not ideal. And that's one of the numbers that I kind of point out, too. I wrote it down for our Heels thing because of the red zone and third down percentage with the Jags have been really bad. Their red zone percentage is only 44.44% this year. And the Bears is 61.54. Third down percentage, both teams struggle. But even the 33.8 for the Bears is better than the 25.93 for the Jags. And that's just something that the Jags have honestly struggled with last year, too. It was an issue then. But you could get away with it at that 8-3 start because of other things, and then it caught up towards the end of the season.
Yeah, that's where we thought Gabe Davis
was going to make the difference,
and maybe Brian Thomas Jr. too. Just don't put too much on a rookie, but both. BTJ led the nation last year in college football with receiving touchdowns of 17.
Yeah.
And Gabe Davis, you have a great
It was like
stat.
the red zone stat where he was the second best wide receiver in the red zone.
What has happened?
I don't know.
Now,
I feel like I do not see him.
Like, those two, the ball bounced off his face mask.
I saw that.
At times. Yeah. And so those two have not gotten on the same page. I referenced earlier they kind of got into it on the sidelines last week. We'll see what it looks like the next few weeks. Do they replace some of his snaps, Gabe Davis' snaps, with Evan Ingram now that he's coming back? Like, I don't know how
and
that's
do more
going
two
to
tight
look.
end stuff possibly if Gabe's just not working.
Yeah, I mean, that, like I said, they have no identity on offense. It should be that you can't cover Brian Thomas Jr. and Trevor's going to drop the ball in perfectly. And, oh, by the way, if you try and double team BTJ, the Jags are going to kill you with a Christian Kirk across the middle in the slot. And oh, by the way, Travis Etienne can catch the ball to the backfield really well. Like, you can't stop us. Evan Ingram, too, but it's not that.
Yeah, it has not been that. Do you think that we see Javon Dexter and Ventrell swap jerseys?
Oh, absolutely.
Because they got drafted same year, obviously both Florida guys.
Yeah.
I feel like that'll definitely be one of the little sideline interactions we'll see.
Yeah, I'm sure that there will be some trash talking ahead of the game. Probably not about Florida, Tennessee. That
they're not
happens Saturday night. We'll see. I guess you
maybe
said
if they end up upsetting Tennessee.
You said there's several Tennessee players on the Bears team.
Yes, we do. Yeah, because obviously, Darryl Taylor went there, Valus, and Darnell Wright. Yeah.
So there could be some after the fact trash talking, I suppose, for one team or the other. But those two guys, I'm sure that they have a deep bond because Florida football for so long was so good, and while they were there, not
the defense
so
was
good.
struggling. It was
defense
them too.
Was historically
it was
bad.
Javon and Ventrell.
Yeah.
Like
Now, if you watch closely, like both of them were really good.
Yeah.
But overall, the defense wasn't good.
Yeah.
It's the same way we talk about LSU's defense last year. We haven't seen that much out of Mason Smith. We haven't seen really anything out of Jordan Jefferson yet. Both came from LSU. On the defensive side, and they were terrible defensively. But certain players can be really good, even if the defense isn't good.
Yeah, I remember talking to Hayes Carline, who works with us too. But he did my Florida preview for the draft, and he said, both of them. He's like, I think they'll both be good players in the NFL. They just had to do everything. Like they were it. That's all that an offense had to plan for on that defense at the time.
Ventrell Miller was hurt some at Florida, just like he was hurt all of last year too. So that certainly hurt him.
Affected him. Yeah. Well, thanks, Lauren. I appreciate it. Again, this is an interesting week for me, but hopefully both teams win. I don't think
Taylor's rooting for a tie. No, she's not. Don't let her fool you.
I know.
She's rooting for the Bears. I am not.
She's not. All right. Thanks, Lauren, and I will see you tomorrow when we have another show.
Sounds good. Thank you so much.